Greetings, students, and happy chapter number 9. So let's run through fat-soluble vitamins and kind of talk about the difference between water-soluble vitamins, which we talked about in chapter 8. Again, this is a fairly short chapter. So fat-soluble vitamins relate to vitamins A, D, E, and K. Right, so not your C, not your B vitamins, right, which were the water-soluble vitamins. So those are the fat-soluble vitamins. And again, in order for those vitamins to be absorbed into our body, we need to have fat to work with them. That's why they're called fat-soluble vitamins. And in order for them to be absorbed, we need, along with that fat, we need bile, right? So the gallbladder produces bile. And so that bile and that dietary fat kind of combine together to be able to transport the nutrients of the vitamins into our bloodstream and get it to all of our cells and get it to where it needs to go. So that's kind of how they work. And we need to make sure that we're eating our fruits and vegetables because that's where a whole lot of our fat-soluble vitamins come from. Right, so freezing, let's talk about freezing and canning, the processes of freezing and canning, and what does that really mean? So with freezing vegetables, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Oftentimes, most of us think of frozen vegetables as bad or not as good for you as fresh vegetables, all of that. But sometimes our vegetables, our produce is actually frozen right where it's picked. So right in the fields, right when it's kind of plucked from the ground or from the stalks or wherever it comes from, it's frozen immediately, which means that we kind of get to seal in those nutrients right away instead of there being transportation time and losing those nutrients and then freezing, right? So that can be a positive thing. On the other hand, we know that the freezing process causes nutrient loss. Right, so that process of not eating something right away does cause there to be some loss of nutrients. Doesn't mean that if you have the option between eating a salad with lots of vegetables in it or eating, some yummy cake, that you should choose the cake because maybe the salad has lost some of its nutrients. That's not the case because, of course, that salad is still going to be better for you as long as you don't drench it in your salad dressing. And then with freezing, it slows the loss of nutrients caused by the exposure to heat, light, and air. So we said that when fruits and vegetables are in transport, like if we get them from Idaho and we need to get them to California, when they're in that transport on a big truck or whatever it be, that time that they're exposed to air and especially to heat and light causes them to lose some nutrients. And so these are the things that you want to keep in mind when we think about freezing vegetables. Canning, again, the process of canning is completely different. The process of canning, we typically are adding salt and a lot of different preservatives to keep that, whatever it be, that vegetable or produce in its kind of canned form for a long time. That's why if you look at the expiration date on your canned foods, they are typically way far out because we've preserved them. And again, we've added typically a lot of sodium because sodium happens to preserve food. That's one of its kind of main roles. So vitamin A is good for you. Vitamin A, as we can see here, has a lot of good different properties for you. One of the main ones that we tend to think about is our skin. So Retin A and Accutane are two different products that can be prescribed by dermatologists. Sometimes they can come in some over-the-counter or some products you can purchase without a prescription. Basically, they are to assist with Retin A, in particular assist with wrinkles and with really helping to have a good, clear skin tone, whereas Accutane can be very successful in treating acne. Right, so acne. So both of those come from vitamin A. So the fact that both of those two skin type of regimens or skin healing agents come from vitamin A tells you that vitamin A in general is really, really useful for your skin. Our skin is one of the largest organs on our body, right? Think of how much space your skin covers. And it's probably one of the most neglected organs and systems in our body. Most, or I should say many people, you know, they don't really, aren't not diligent about moisturizing their skin, about as soon as you get out of the shower, you know, while your skin is still wet, going ahead and putting on your lotion, because then it locks in that moisture to keep your skin healthy, right? So your skin is an organ that needs to be moisturized. It needs to be hydrated, and most Americans really neglect that process. A lot of people think about their face, but don't think about maybe the rest of their body. And so you should be considering that we need to take care of our skin. But retin-A, really, really useful when we talk about skincare. All right, here's some of the foods that contain good amounts of retin-A. And then another thing that's really useful for vitamin A would be our eyes. So our eyes really depend on vitamin A, and for people who have an issue with their body processing vitamin A, they will have vision problems. And so you can read about how vitamin A really does make sure that we have our vision intact. Again, you can read about some of the toxic issues with vitamin A. Vitamin D is what we refer to as the sunshine vitamin. So it can be produced internally. So in other words, our body can actually produce vitamin D. So when we have exposure to sunlight, we can actually continue to, sorry, I gotta minimize this thing here. I'm sharing with my PowerPoint. Sorry about the technical difficulty. But again, vitamin D is the sunshine vitamin. When we're exposed to sunlight, that sunlight interacts with under our skin to kind of create this vitamin D and make it active. Now, a lot of people, believe it or not, don't get at least 10 minutes of direct sunlight. That's really what we say you need, is 10 minutes a day of direct sunlight. Sometimes also our body is just not really good at going through that process of taking the sunlight and interacting with the vitamin to, you know, have this creation of vitamin D. And so for a lot of reasons, people take supplements. I actually take a vitamin D supplement. Even though I make it a point to get outside, I definitely don't like the sun, in the sense that the sun is your enemy when it comes to skin cancer, when it comes to wrinkles, all of those different things. Whole milk has a whole lot of vitamin D. So it is probably one of the best sources of vitamin D is whole milk, right? So again, think whole milk versus fat-free milk, right? Which is not going to have as much of that vitamin D. So the primary function of vitamin D is to interact. That's why we think of milk, because it really plays into our calcium intake and how our calcium works in our body, as well as our phosphorus levels. And so in order to keep our body in balance, vitamin D plays a crucial role in factoring these two different minerals that we need, right? So our calcium and our phosphorus, we need those. And vitamin D is like the helper or the agent that helps to keep them in balance in our system. Right, again, you can look through some good sources of vitamin D and kind of look at how the sunlight interacts to create that, right? Really interesting kind of stuff, and how we absorb it. We're not too concerned about a lot of toxicity with vitamin D, yet in other parts of the world there is that concern. So vitamin E is really what we call an antioxidant. We mentioned this before last time when we talked about water soluble vitamins, but saying that vitamin C is a really good antioxidant. Well, here vitamin E is a really, really good antioxidant. A lot of times even doctors will say things like, you know, if you have a scar or you have something on your skin, using topical vitamin E to actually put it on that wound may be something that's helpful. So the roles of vitamin E, it helps to protect our membranes. When we talk about membranes, we mean inside of our body. We're talking about the cells and the different things that have, think of it as skin. Think of membrane as kind of like skin. And so it helps to keep that, you know, membranes lubricated and helps to keep them in good structure and in good form. Maintains the integrity of our red blood cells, right? Super important. And it protects against environmental pollutants. And this is a big one, because we're finding out more and more through kind of long-term research that many of the different environmental processes we have, such as all of our factories that make things for us, however, they shoot off a lot of toxins into the environment. Our cars, of course, pollute the environment. We have a lot of different situations that have been found to be, really not helpful for your skin, for your breathing, all of those things. So vitamin E is really helpful in doing that. So you can increase your antioxidant intake by eating more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. So all three of those things are really useful to your body in protecting it. Antioxidants, really good word. Whenever you hear that, you want to be aware. And these are vitamins or foods that you want to be consuming. Right, so again, you can kind of read how this all takes place in the body. Vitamin K is what it really helps to think of, helps with our blood in the sense that is really useful in blood clotting. So it produces prothrombin, and prothrombin really helps us to clot our blood. So hemophiliacs are individuals who struggle with this prothrombin, and what happens with hemophiliacs is when they get a cut or when their skin is broken open or when they bleed for some reason, their body is challenged to stop the bleeding. For most of us, when we cut ourselves or we have some type of injury in which we're bleeding, right away our body defenses kick into gear. And our blood cells go over to that area where we have an injury, and they right away start to try to clot. They want to stop the blood loss from our body. And so that's their job. Right? So prothrombin helps our blood to do that job. It helps our blood to clot, which will stop it from exiting our body or from continuing to bleed. We want that to happen because, of course, we know that with certain percentage, or if we were to lose a certain amount of blood from our body, we would die. Right? And so that's why for hemophiliacs, it's very concerning when they get injured because their body is really struggling to stop the bleeding. So vitamin K, really useful in that way. And again, you can look at the good dietary sources for that and look at how it works to clot for us. Right, so who needs to take supplements? When we talk about supplements, we're talking about pills. Typically pills, sometimes they can be chews or they can be powders or different things, but for the most part, they're pills. And so, yes, when we're talking about people who are on a very restricted kcal diet, you need to make sure that you're getting your recommended vitamins and minerals, and that's going to come through supplements, right? If you look here, you can see vegans, older adults, and even in my case, when I was under 50, I used to take a woman's multivitamin. When I turned 50 and now I'm over 50, I actually take a vitamin that's specific for aging. And we'll talk about some things that it has in it that are really good and healthy for aging. But so anyway, think about your age group and think about your activity level. And you can see here that there's some reasons that we should be. Now, there's some reasons such as that vitamin C is just always good for you. Vitamin E is good for you. There's calcium. There's things that you can take that maybe it's not for a reason that you're not getting enough, but getting more doesn't really hurt you, and it's a good thing. All right, and then make sure you go through your kind of like your question slides, your clicker slides to make sure you absorbed what we kind of talked about. As I said, this is a really short chapter. I will see you soon for chapter number 10.